So what you're saying is they want to gauge how much outrage there'll be, how much public outcry there'll be, but they also want to see whether or not they can convince those people who have that kind of an outcry not to take all their money out of banks and basically convince them that everything's going to be okay.
Yes, that's correct. And I think that you probably have the title to this, but this coming week we have maneuvers in the United States with Australian, German, Mexican, Canadian, and U.S. troops.
And UK troops. And private forces, by the way. But I know exactly what you're talking about. If you don't know what it is, it's National Level Exercise 09. It's going to be held in the last week of July. It's going to be starting, actually, the day after I get back from California. Totally and completely nightmarish. A total surveillance state is what they're practicing for, taking over all local governments, state governments, tribal governments, and much more. We're going to talk NLE 09 on the other side with Bob Dacy and Bob Chapman. It's the Alex Jones Show. I'm Jason Bermas, sitting in PrisonPlanet.tv. All right, folks, we are back. It's the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas sitting in. Joining me in studio is Bob Dacy, and over the phone is Bob Chapman. We're going to take your calls in the next segment. But I also want to remind people that we are documentary filmmakers out here, and our recent picture, Reflections and Warnings, an interview with Aaron Russo, is now available for free, folks, for free when you get yourself a copy of Endgame and some of the other great movies over at the Infowars gift shop. And I want to remind people, my film, Fabled Enemies, if you want to know about the international intelligence agency that actually did carry out 9/11, we cover it from front to back in this video. Barry Jennings, the current Vice President of the United States, Joseph Biden, Cynthia McKinney, Michael J. Springman, Bo Dietl, and so much more. Fabled Enemies, go check it out. Now, we were talking about this state of the economy. We're talking about bank holidays and local currencies. Mr. Chapman, if the government starts issuing local currencies, what is the economy in this country going to look like, and what are we going to be doing day to day? I mean, how is that going to work?
Well, as I said, I think they'll have a large meeting, so to speak, and they'll decide ahead of time how much one currency is going to be devalued against another. Mm-hmm. And, of course, all of those changes are going to make all of those currencies degenerate in value versus gold. And so that's very important. But I think if they were to do a switch like that now there's a thing called the USDX, and it's 6 currencies, major currencies, weighted each one against the dollar. Now, the USDX is probably at the state that it's in now, you would probably see somewhere between a 50% and 70% reduction of the dollar versus that group of currencies, that 6 currencies. And that's one heck of a devaluation. Mm-hmm. But what would have to happen at the same time, there would have to be an adjustment of debt between countries, because 64.5% of all of the foreign exchange held by other countries is in dollars. Mm-hmm. So everybody's going to take a haircut if they do that, and I think that's coming.
Well, that is just, it's nightmarish. I wonder what happens to other localized currencies that are outside of government control, like, say, the Lakota rounds.
Well, they'd go up in value. Silver and gold will go up in value. Mm-hmm. If the value of the dollar, let's say, went down 50%, then we would assume that gold and silver would rise 50%.
But doesn't that put them in kind of a spot?
Maybe even a lot more.
But I understand that the rounds essentially would be worth more, but actually in those communities where they're using the rounds as currency, don't you think the federal government is going to want to step in and further regulate them? I mean, when you look at this exercise that you're talking about, National Level Exercise 09, is in FEMA Region 6. That means Texas, Arizona, parts of California, basically the Southwest, and there are Indian reservations there, and they state specifically in these documents that they're going to be going after state, local, and tribal governments. Basically, this is a huge federal takeover, but it's really an international takeover because, like you stated before, we're talking about governments in Canada, Mexico, Australia, the UK, and then private organizations also taking part.
Well, that's correct. And, we're just going to have to watch what they do because we don't know exactly what they are going to do. We have to learn as much from what they're doing as they do. Mm-hmm. And then we have to broadcast and let everybody know about it because certainly mainline media is not going to carry it.
That's right, and it's for a full week, and people really do need to arm themselves with cameras and questions if we want to expose this to the world via Infowars and YouTube, Mr. Dacy.
I want to know from Bob. I have a question for him about this bank holiday thing. I mean, I'm a retailer. I have a local hardware store. How does that affect the guy on the street? I'm in the real world, mainstream America, real business, people getting their toilet fixed and getting their light bulbs changed and all that. How does that affect the average retail establishment during a bank holiday? What happens? You don't take credit cards or what? How does that play out?
Well, you can't because they won't function, and neither will ATMs.
Well, then nothing will function.
Well, that's true.
That's what everybody uses nowadays.
And gold, or there will be some establishments, I'm sure, that will accept checks incumbent upon the problem being solved. And, of course, government will say, well, we'll have this fixed in a few days, so don't worry about it.
But wait a minute, Bob, won't that also cause an artificial run on the banks if places start actually taking checks that are, say, post-dated to when the banks reopen? Won't there be just an exorbitant amount of checks that are post-dated for when this bank holiday ends, which could then, again, cripple these banks once more? I want to get your opinion on that. On the other side, we're going to be taking your calls. Tony, Rob, Matt, Darren, and more. It's the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas sitting in. I am with the Bobs, Bob Dacy and Bob Chapman. Go check out the latest news over at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv.